If you were to tell me, Rick, you will make a video about how the Han Solo movie affects the Star Wars universe, I would have responded with, you're an idiot. Solo will be meh at best and will have almost no real impact on the universe outside of Han's character. Turns out, the movie's not half bad. It's not great, but it was better than I thought it'd be. Before I go any further, I'm going to slap a big old spoiler warning. If you haven't seen Solo and don't wish for the movie to be spoiled, I would highly recommend not watching this. So in the movie, Han encounters a character by the name of Dryden Voss, who is the leader of a criminal group known as the Crimson Dawn. During the movie, Voss mentions that even he has someone to whom he answers to, and during the movie's climax, we are shown who that person is. After killing Voss, Emilia Clarke's character Kira contacts a hooded figure who we learn is Darth Maul. Now you might have thought, wait, isn't Maul dead? Does this movie take place before The Phantom Menace? The answer to that question is no. This movie takes place a few years before A New Hope, and also no, Maul didn't die on Naboo despite being cut in half. So allow me to take a moment to explain what Maul has been up to since we last saw him in the films. After being cut in half by Obi-Wan Kenobi, Maul clung to life through the dark side of the Force, his hatred for Obi-Wan fueling and empowering him. This led to him going insane, and I mean like legitimately a nutcase. He ends up on a junk planet and lives there for years until his brother, Savage Opress, discovers him. So, quick backstory, Maul is from the planet of Dathomir, which is ruled by witches known as the Night Sisters. Maul's decision to become Sidious's apprentice was actually not a decision at all, he was given to Sidious. Savage Opress had a similar backstory, but was instead given to Count Dooku as a trick by the Night Sisters to betray him. When that didn't work, Savage was sent to find his brother Maul. At this point, Maul was a crazy spider robot thing. It's actually pretty creepy when you watch it in the Clone Wars TV series. Savage takes Maul back to Dathomir, where his mind is healed and is given new legs. With his mind intact again, Maul is driven purely by his need for revenge on Obi-Wan. He and Savage attack and kill innocent people and demand Obi-Wan come meet them. When he does, he is then captured. Maul starts to torture Obi-Wan until he is saved by a former Night Sister named Asajj Ventress, Dooku's former assassin. After Obi-Wan's escape, Maul opted for a more careful approach. Eventually, he and his brother come in contact with Death Watch, a group of Mandalorians looking to preserve the Mandalorian way of the warrior. They make a deal with Maul to help him build a crime syndicate and an army to retake Mandalore from the current ruler, Duchess Satine. Maul recruits several groups to his cause, the Black Suns, the Pikes, who appear in the Solo movie, and the Hutt families. Think about that for a second. If you ever thought that Jabba was the biggest and baddest gangster in the galaxy, just know that at one point he pledged his allegiance to Maul. Anyway, with this new army, Maul intended to use Mandalore as a base for his syndicate to expand, but first had to deal with his old rival. Using Duchess Satine as bait, by the way, Obi-Wan and Satine totally have a thing for each other. This is important because, of course, against the Jedi Council's wishes, Obi-Wan goes to rescue Satine. However, he is captured and is forced to watch as Maul executes Satine in front of him. Obi-Wan eventually escapes thanks to the rogue members of Death Watch who refuse to follow Maul. But Maul's rule was short-lived when his former Sith Master Darth Sidious arrived on Mandalore. Surprised that Maul survived at all, Sidious revealed that Maul and Savage couldn't be allowed to continue, considering the one and only rule of the Sith that there could only ever be two. With Sidious having replaced Maul with Count Dooku, Maul and Savage were seen as rivals and had to be removed. After a pretty awesome fight scene, Sidious kills Savage and tortures Maul. What's interesting is that Sidious doesn't kill Maul. Instead, he says,
I have other uses for you.
And that's the last we see of him in the Clone Wars series. Now, I did some research, and I learned that Maul was intended to be used to take out the witches of Dathomir, but he was eventually rescued by his loyal followers in Death Watch. He returned to Mandalore and aimed to regain control of his syndicate. That is until Obi-Wan returned to Coruscant and gained the approval to send an assault team to liberate Mandalore. Just before the assault began, word of General Grievous capturing Chancellor Palpatine pulled Anakin and Obi-Wan back to Coruscant to rescue him, like they do at the start of Revenge of the Sith. This left Anakin's Padawan Ahsoka Tano to lead the attack. Ahsoka fought Maul and with the use of her clone troopers was able to capture him. However, this all happened during the events of Revenge of the Sith, and when the time came for Palpatine to trigger Order 66, Ahsoka's clone troopers turned on her. She escaped, but so did Maul. It could be assumed that Maul retreated from Mandalore and regrouped with his syndicate. He likely continued expanding, leading to the creation of the new group Crimson Dawn. By the time we see him in Solo, Maul is likely the one true crime lord of the galactic underworld, making him an interesting player for future spin-offs. Now here's the thing, there is another TV series called Rebels that takes place not long before the events of A New Hope. In this show, Maul appears again. I'm going to stop here because I personally kind of wish I didn't know this next piece of information as it pertains to Maul. So I'm going to slap another spoiler warning. If you don't want to know how Maul's story ends, which it totally does in Rebels, then you might want to stop here. The thing about his appearance in Rebels is that he first appears as a lonely prisoner on the planet of Malachor, where he meets the character Ezra Bridger. During the rest of his run with the show, Maul takes Ezra as an apprentice as the show toys with the idea of Ezra's dark side turn, which never happens. Maul manipulates Ezra into helping him learn about the location of Obi-Wan Kenobi, who is currently living as a hermit on Tatooine. He is ultimately killed by Obi-Wan in their final very short duel. The thing is, during Rebels, Maul is not a crime lord. He shows no signs that he even has allies and then dies to Obi-Wan. So the question is, where is this Maul cameo in Solo supposed to go? Now, a lot of people have guessed that Maul is being set up as the villain for the upcoming Kenobi movie, but if he dies to Obi-Wan in Rebels, then they can't do that in a movie without breaking canon. Which is a shame because I would have 110% been on board for a movie with that very plot. Unfortunately, it can't happen. We can't even say that this was just another time that Maul met with Obi-Wan because we learn in Rebels that Maul doesn't even know if Obi-Wan survived Order 66 until he gets a vision with Ezra's help. So Maul last sees Obi-Wan on Mandalore when he killed Satine and then never again until their final confrontation. It's clear from this tease that Maul's time as a crime lord will be explored. We will likely see the bridging of the gap between when we see him in Solo to how he loses his criminal empire and ends up on Malachor where he meets Ezra. So with that gap, what can be explored? There have been rumors of a Boba Fett movie picking up steam. If that movie is explored, then we will likely see the current state of Jabba and Maul's relationship. Maul might even be the main bad for that movie if Jabba wanted to break free of Maul, assuming he hadn't done so already. Personally, I always liked the idea of using a still-alive Mace Windu for the Boba Fett movie, but I wouldn't be surprised if Maul made a minor appearance in a similar fashion that he does in Solo. Actually, making a Mace Windu movie would be a pretty neat idea here too if Maul were to serve as the main villain. Maul and Mace Windu never personally interact ever, but it's not to say that they couldn't do so here. Say Windu is now a rebel in his own way like Enfys Nest was. Maybe the two even join forces to take down Maul's enterprise. Actually, that works a lot. Enfys Nest expresses in Solo that she has been personally wronged by the Crimson Dawn. If Maul's their leader, then it wouldn't be too far-fetched to say that this was all set up for her to take Maul on with the help of Mace Windu. Or maybe Windu isn't involved at all, but then I find it hard to buy that anyone not a Jedi or Sith could defeat Maul. And we know from Rebels that at some point Maul has to be defeated and his empire dismantled. A lot of people have been speculating that there will be another Han Solo movie. This makes sense considering Kira's story not being resolved. There are also stories about Han Solo that this movie didn't cover, like Chewbacca's life debt to Han, seeing Kashyyyk, Han's first encounter with Jabba. To be honest, I wouldn't be totally upset if they did another Solo movie, but honestly, I didn't even want the first one. I'm on board for another, maybe like years down the line, but I have more of a desire to explore this Maul thing than telling any other Solo story that could easily be covered in a book or even video game. The issue with using Maul for another Solo movie is that Maul and Han can't encounter each other. When we see Han in A New Hope, he quickly dismisses the existence of the Force, but if he had encountered Maul at any point before this, it makes this line make zero sense.
Kid, I've flown from one side of this galaxy to the other. I've seen a lot of strange stuff, but I've never seen anything to make me believe there's one all-powerful force controlling everything. It's all a lot of simple tricks and nonsense.
So one can assume that Han does not play any additional part in whatever story Maul's a part of. But what about a Maul standalone? This might end up being the most likely outcome, a movie that shows him at the height of his criminal empire, but then we see how it all falls. Maybe he encounters the Emperor or even Vader. In Rebels, we know that Maul has a slight fear of Vader and hates the Emperor for betraying him, so there is already a foundation for a story to build on. Maybe we see Kira becoming his new apprentice as he builds for a battle against the Empire. Oh man, the more I think about it, the more I want to see that movie. When was the last time we got a Star Wars movie that featured two villainous sides battling against each other? In Rebels, Maul mentioned that
I cannot defeat Vader alone.
A statement he makes because he likely has faced him before. It gives us a badass Maul movie, more Vader, more Emperor, and fits well with Rebels, leaving that story and the overall canon intact. But I can't think of any other way for Maul to be used in future films, which is clearly what they're teasing here. While I wish I didn't know about Maul's ultimate fate, there are certainly some good directions future movies can take here. I guess the question isn't really how he dies, but how his empire falls. Personally, I like the idea of a Maul movie where he takes on the Empire but loses. However, I wouldn't hate the idea of seeing more Infus Ness's rebellion taking him on, and I have my fingers crossed for a return of Mace Windu. I don't want to see Han and Maul meet. Or maybe they do, but Maul doesn't show off his powers to him. I can see that working. I do want to see more of Kira, and I personally would love to see her embrace the role of a villain. Maybe seeing her light up her own lightsaber as Maul's new apprentice. I have never been more excited about Maul than I am right now, and I have the Solo movie to thank for that. You know, that movie that actually wasn't terrible. But what do you think? How would you like to see Maul be used in future films? Let me know in the comments, and as always, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you next time.